Hello, people of the internet. Once again, you get wonderful, awkward faces while I wait to see if hitting the record button actually works. Sometimes I concern myself. This last week it hasn't been fun. But this is week 7 of YouTube Pagan Challenge, and it is, the prompt for this week is, how do you view sacred texts and mythology? This is an interesting question because, honestly, I feel like some other people probably have given my pretty much opinion on it. Sacred texts and mythology are things. They're things that, in some ways, do indeed reflect somewhat on the gods. I know that Joe brought up the treatment of Hera in mythology and how it's all bullshit. Sorry, I love Hera. Hera's awesome. And I mean, there's the whole also added thing of, since Spaniards came to the Americas, all sorts of shit is messed up. Like, people are having a hard time figuring out who were actually the main people worshipped in Aztec culture, because they focused on, when the Spaniards came, they focused on Huitzilopochtli, and who, well, is my dad, not honestly the best guy. And honestly, the Aztecs were more nature-oriented, not exactly nature-oriented, but like, it was more about flowers and culture versus war and death, which is a big part of what people see now, which is super sad. So there's that. I honestly feel like the amount of translations and stuff, and the amount that we've lost for sacred texts and mythology, I feel like it shouldn't be relied on as much as it is. Just because not only are those experiences mistranslated and misinterpreted and fragmented, it's also they're from a different time than we're in now. Morals dissonance is a huge part. And also words not meaning the same things as they used to. Virgin meant unmarried woman, did not mean anything about the hoo-ha. That's my biggest pet peeve. Honestly, that is probably my biggest pet peeve. I mean, eventually it turned out to mean that, but that was after a while, and yeah. I just feel like it shouldn't be looked on upon and so much as it is, because while there are some good things in there and some things that can help you figure out identities of deities and know a little bit more about them, they're not the end-all be-all. Simply because thinking of the gods as static beings, for one, is terrifying. Why would we let something static into our lives like this? I'm not entirely sure why we would. I personally do not have any static beings in my life. Okay, never mind. I know. I go to school with some. But that's about it. And honestly, I feel like mythology is just a good starting place. The sacred texts are a good starting place. We do not have a ton of the mythology, including from Greek mythology. We have so much stuff that was lost. I recently read Autobiography of Red by Anne Carson for one of my college classes. And she is a classicist, and she does she does translations and everything, and academic papers, but Autobiography of Red is a novel in verse. And at the very beginning, she's talking about Stesichorus, who was after Homer by a few hundred years, but he changed everything in a way for the telling of Greek mythology and Greek stories. He also wrote about Heracles' 10th labor from the point of view of the monster that Heracles killed. We don't have all of that. We only have a select few fragments, and she did some of her own translations at the beginning of that book before writing a modern tale based on that story through Geryon's point of view, Geryon being the red monster of that myth. And portraying it as a modern tale, even without putting gods anywhere in there, was interesting, and it has a bit of a lesson because they're not static and they change just like we do. They just don't look as old or don't change visibly as much, but they're learning just as much as we are as a community, and that's important to know. I mean, it's a huge reason why tons of people say that Hermes and Mercury are gods of the internet, gods of airplanes. It makes sense because of what we know that they did, what they were patrons of in the time that we have the most information from them, still not a ton of time. We know that, and we also, and we adapted it, just like I'm sure they did, because if you don't adapt to the changing worlds around you, it's a sad thing, and it's a deadly thing. So that's just kind of how I view it. I feel like it is something that can be interpreted through a lens of our modern day, but we have to adjust certain things because there's no way the gods are the same as they were when those were written. If you were a human who was granted immortality in that time, sure, you may not be as adept at things in the here and now, with humanity now, but you would have seen a ton of change from whenever you wrote down about one of these gods to now. And would you not have changed too? I mean, sure, it would be a lot like how there are some problems with older people in technology these days, but at the same time, if you're immortal, let's say you also have eternal youth with that, and you can't be killed, I'd say there's a pretty good chance that you have plenty of time to learn to do just about everything in the changing world. So, versus, say, some of the people I help at work who, while awesome and pick up technology decently fast, they haven't had time to do anything with this stuff. I had a wonderful lady who's in one of my classes and is older and super nice. She's probably in her 30s, 40s considering the amount of gray hair, but she still looks very young. She had never done a PowerPoint before until our class, and so I helped her out with that. But she picked it up real fast, but she had no clue before then. So, I mean, it's a pretty important thing to see when you have the time of being immortal. And sure, you have other things to do, but you have the time of it. There's a lot of change that you are willing to go through. So that's my take on it. I kind of ranted there for a bit. Though I could honestly write an essay about it and it'd be pretty good. Anyway, today's Valentine's Day, so I'm gonna go out and do things with the guys. I need to put on a shirt on and I need to go shopping. So we're gonna go shopping. I may be going out with some friends later today. Who knows? Yeah. So everyone, have a wonderful week. And I hoped that this was interesting for some people.